Regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. Written and narrated by Amie McNee. Chapter 4. Being isolated in your room for days on end allows too much time for thinking, and plotting, and scheming, and planning retribution. I'd never felt more witchy. Agnes was giving me snippets of information every time she bought me food or came to bathe me. My husband was still in town, apparently causing havoc each night with his men, waiting for his wife to bleed. I was listening intently to my body. Every shift, gurgle, minor pain was either a baby or my monthly bleeding, depending on how I was feeling. My father and my brothers would have met to discuss what to do with me if I bled. At night, when I was asleep in my bed, I wished I would bleed, because I didn't want to spend my nights with that man. But in the days, when the sun was out, it was another story. If he couldn't get an annulment, he might go the way of the king and get a divorce. Me, my father's daughter, a divorced woman. After one night of marriage, I hated myself. I could see the conversations they would have about me, all of them, Thomas especially. Dirty little prick. Father would call me the blight on their family. I suppose he already did that, but he would do it more. All the work my family had done crawling their way betwixt the Tudor house's buttocks would be destroyed by me, the elf-skinned witch in a family of courtiers. Day 7. Torrential rain. No bleeding. No one had seen me except Agnes. She had surpassed Thomas in my list of hated people. She had obtained the top spot. "Why won't you get up to greet me?" I had been lying on my bed, looking at the beams in the roof for well over an hour. I didn't respond. Agnes put down a plate of something bad smelling. "It is cabbage," she said, seeing my nose wrinkle. I continued to ignore her. "Do you have any news?" she asked me for the third time today. I said nothing. "How were you born of your dear mother?" she exclaimed, banging my door shut. If my body hadn't been so heavy, I would have thrown something in her direction, but it felt as if someone had tied me to the bed. I continued to stare at the beams. There were 13 that run diagonally across the room, and then 2 that run the other way. I felt a tugging on my mattress. I flipped myself onto my tummy and looked under my bed. It was Jimmy, of course, digging his claws into the mattress and pulling on the hay. It looked cozy under the bed, so I decided to join him. I took a blanket under there. Then I lit my shortest candle to give the space a safe but sultry glow. I lay on my back, listening to the heavy rain and watching as my cat pulled the hay from my mattress. It was satisfying, but destructive. I wish I could be angry at my baby boy, but I couldn't. He was my one true friend. I thumbed a piece of straw and watched as his cat eyes caught the candlelight and became glazed with the terrifyingly wonderful glow. I wondered if he really were my imp. If he was, did that make me a witch? I guess when you add up my mark, my cat, my penchant for writing poems and playing with words, it didn't look good. But I wasn't made for witchiness. I was made for womanhood, wifeliness, and baby boys. I was trying so hard to do what I was meant to do, but no amount of compliance or obedience was working. It was day 9. Red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. The sky was a brilliant red. The storm never came, but I bled. I had always hated my bleed, but I hated this bleed the most, I think. Or maybe I was grateful for it. I withheld the information from my mother. I needed time to think, without everyone else intervening. I lay under my bed, staring into space. How funny it is that the very thing that is shared with other women takes my womanhood from me and turns me into a witch. Perhaps I was not my mother's daughter at all. Was it possible there had been some sort of hiccup, a switching of babes? A wet nurse with a marred child swapped her cursed babe with the Lord's? I began making a list of possible next moves. These were my options. Actually curse his prick. Make it constantly floppy. Cons. I don't know how to curse pricks, and if I figure it out, he will probably know it was me. Purchase poison and become a young widow, with all his estates and property. Cons. Don't want to be hanged or go to the tower. Fake pregnancy. Con. Tricky to do. Could eat a lot and get a rotund belly, but eventually I would be found out. Entreat the advice of real witches. Con. I was plaiting the straw as I thought. I knew there were wise women in Watlington. They were well known, respected. Once I had heard about an elixir they had sold to the notoriously crazy widow Thatcher. Supposedly, it had made some man mad with lust for her. The servants had talked about it for weeks. My whole body shivered. The witches in town would know what to do. They would have some potion or spell or some potent words at least, surely. I had torn my piece of straw into thin shreds. Was this madness? I didn't know. Darkness, a big cloak, the courage to drop about a foot into the air. I had 2 of the 3. I looked down into the black garden bed that lay beneath my window. Just do it, Maude. I squeezed myself through the small gap that my delicate diamond-paned window afforded. I hung from the stone sill by my fingertips. Drop, Maude. Drop. I landed, smiled, then tripped over a protruding root with a thud and a small whimper. I looked back up at Sherburn from the dirt. It was not a fashionable home, but it was intimidating. I imagined the kings from the past would like it. Sturdy, all sandstone, thick-walled and unmistakably a castle. No one seemed to be stirring, no candlelight at the windows. I just had to hope the town was quiet too. I half regretted not bringing my own candle, but I had been right to be cautious. The walk to town would take 30 minutes, and I would stick out like a sore thumb with a light bobbing along the lane. My tummy looped at the thought of being seen by someone on the way. I wished again I were a witch. I could conjure a protection spell to prevent me being attacked or having my money stolen. I set off, fantasizing about what my mother would do if she knew what I was up to. It half scared me, half delighted me. The path was straight and not complicated, but trees in the breeze looked like highwaymen. Wandering sheep in the dark looked like crouching brigands. The sound of my own quick feet on the road sounded exactly like someone else's feet on the dirt road. 30 minutes was an eternity, but eventually I saw the light of an inn on the outskirts of town. I had grown up a walk away from this town, but I had rarely been into Watlington. I had been once with my mother when I was young, and I remembered little of it. And another time when I was 10 years old, when I had begged my older brother to cure a bad case of boredom. But really, I had no need for public spaces. What was I to do in them? The high street was nearly empty. I saw a few beggars and strays lingering in doorways, but I gave them a wide berth. There were a lot of inns, 5 or 6 on one street. Candlelight flickered from within, and there was the comforting sound of people laughing and talking filtering out the windows. I wondered which house my husband was staying in. I walked quickly along the cobbled road, peering up at the emporium signs, trying to read their names. I could hear them swinging in the night air, but it was too dark to make out the words. Feeling panicked, I took a right-hand turn down another lane lined with shops. I started peering into the windows. A bakery, someone's bedchamber, too dark to see, a butcher, no idea, no. I stopped outside one of the older stone houses. It was unlike the rest of the newer, half-timbered buildings. It had a crooked window and a slanting door. I could see shelves filled with small bottles and tinctures being reflected in the moonlight, and there was a candle flickering from somewhere further within the shop. This was my best bet. I knocked. I looked back up at the road towards the street with all the inns. I hadn't thought this far ahead. What if they would not see me so late at night? No one was answering. I knocked one more time. If no one answered, I would go home. The light flickered. Someone had picked up the candlestick and was moving within. A dark figure came to the door. Be brave, Maude. Hello. It was a woman, curvy and kind-looking by the light of her candle. Her head was cocked in the same slant as the door. I'm sorry to disturb you so late, good woman. I am in desperate need, but I do not want to be seen. She stared at my lips, not my eyes. It was unnerving. You do not want to be seen? She repeated. I nodded. Come in. I entered. I'd never met a real witch. I stared at her face as she sat behind the wooden counter. She was fair-haired, round-faced, with rosy cheeks. I looked far more like a traditional witch than she did. She indicated I was to sit on the other side of the counter upon a stool. It felt like a normal apothecary, nothing specifically witchy about it, apart from the fact I was there in the dark. "How can I assist you?" She used hand gestures when she spoke, almost one gesture to each word. I looked around the dark room. Shops just shouldn't be visited in the night time. Any money exchanged at night seemed wrong, illicit. This is wrong, I reminded myself. I need advice, or perhaps a potion, or a spell. I jumped as I felt her hand on my arm. "I'm deaf, child," she said kindly. "Speak to my face so I might read your lips." "I'm sorry," I said, blushing in the darkness. "You need not fret, simply repeat what you said." "I need you to make a man love me," I said, slowly this time. The more I said it, the more stupid I felt. "Tell me more." "A visitor, Hildy." Another woman entered the room. This woman looked far more terrifying. Fine features, a stern face. She put an elegant, long-fingered hand on Hildy's shoulder. "This is Zita," the first witch explained. "And you are Lady Magdalen," Zita said, unsmiling. I recoiled. How could she know me? This had been a mistake. I needed to leave. "No," I said, getting off the stool and backing up. "How do you know who I am?" "We are the wise women," she said. "We know all there is to know around here." "Do you know everything?" I asked, almost hopeful that they might know of my situation so that I did not have to explain it. "We know your husband's staying at the Old Swan," said Zita. "Do you want a potion to stir up his loins?" I flinched. Not really. "I cannot speak with you now you know who I am. It's too risky. You could tell my parents, my husband. You could sell it as gossip to local busybodies." "Don't be a fool. It would be bad business to start selling gossip." Zita sounded insulted. "Why?" "Because every single day we receive dozens of people in our home telling us the most abhorrent, disgusting, personal, and downright damning truths about themselves. It would not do to have a reputation of story leaking." Hildy was approaching me with the candle. I backed away from her. She lifted her hand high, putting the candle flame to a sign that was hung above the door. "Confidential, wise women." "We don't tell secrets," she explained. "My secret's really big, though." "Everyone thinks their secret is the biggest, but our services have been called for at the King's Court, and His Highness most assuredly has bigger secrets than Magdalen does." Zita had a pointed tone. I got the feeling she wasn't taken by me. "Maud," I said instinctively. "Maud," she corrected herself, and held out a hand to indicate I was to move into the next room. It was even darker in there, but the two of them went about lighting a plethora of candles. The ceiling was rendered invisible by hundreds of hanging dried flowers and herbs, as if I were looking at a forest upside down. It smelt beautiful, like a woodland after a storm. We sat at a large round table in the middle of the small room. Sitting in the centre of the table was a large glass ball. I winced. It was so inauspicious. "Don't be frightened of things that you don't understand," Zita said sternly. Hildy passed me a hot chalice of something steaming. "For your nerves." The drink was pepperminty. "Now tell us, what is your problem?" "Are you really invited to court?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. "Don't evade the question," Zita snapped. She reminded me of my mother. I took a shaky breath. "My husband wishes to get rid of me through no fault of my own, and I must protect myself." Zita relayed what I had said to Hildy with hand gestures, whisking them wildly in the air. Hildy nodded, understanding. My heart was beating so fast I worried all the beats would blur together into one long, never-ending note. "Why does he want to be rid of you?" asked Hildy gently. "Why do you need to know?" I whimpered, at risk of a full, tearful breakdown. This was all too much. "Can't you just give me a spell or a potion?" "We need to make sure what we give you is applicable to your circumstance. Let me help you. Is he wanting to be rid of you because you were found not to be a virgin?" I shook my head. "Because you were found to be infertile?" "God forbid it, no." "Try to help us, Maud," Hildy said cooingly. "Because he didn't like how a part of me looked," I managed. Hildy tutted. Zita appraised me, as though taking a guess as to what part of me he might not like. She would never guess. Maybe he's keen on the boys, Hildy suggested. No, I protested. No, he enjoyed my womanly form well enough. Ah, so you have lain together, Zita said. I hated this conversation. Yes. Just the once? Did he not find pleasure in it? He thinks I am a witch. It exploded out of me. I couldn't tolerate another guess. Hildy tutted. I'm not sure we've got a tincture for that. What? My breath caught in my throat. I had thought they would be able to fix anything. We don't have anything for that, repeated Zita. Nothing? A cacophony of self-loathing thoughts overwhelmed me. Men rarely recant accusations such as that. I felt lightheaded. Then what shall I do? Did anyone witness the union? My nose wrinkled as I remembered. Many did. Then he will have a hard time annulling it. Jesus, swiving Christ. I lay my head on the table. It smelt like lavender. I felt a soothing hand on my back. I hadn't had anyone touch me so affectionately in a long time. I let my tears salt the wood beneath my cheeks. What am I to do? You'll have to face the storm, Maude. It is not common to out someone as a witch nowadays. I think it is more likely he will ask for a divorce. Zita was getting ready to leave the room. I could not stem my tears. My body began to shake from the force of my sobs. It is not so bad. If divorce is good enough for the king, I'm sure you can withstand it. Zita wanted me gone. I could hear it in her voice. Don't you have some sort of lusty tincture that riles the men and makes them mad with lust? I tried. Of course, but how will that help you? I could get pregnant, give him a son. Maude, Hildy said softly. Just give it to me, I demanded, wiping snot from my nose. Hildy left the table, returning with a glass vial. You could use these. It was filled with small flakes of something white. It's shredded mushroom. They are strong. Put them in his drink. I bit my lip. What will happen? He will be driven half mad for lust with you. I hiccuped. How long will the effects last? Perhaps a few hours. Do you have anything stronger? These are as strong as you are going to get. Zita clasped her long fingers together. I sighed. What type of mushrooms are they? Curious, are you? Interested in the practice, Maude? Asked Zita. I only asked to make sure you're not poisoning him, I said defensively. Don't trust us? Zounds, no matter. How much are they? Zita opened her mouth to speak, but Hildy cut in front of her. Nothing, pet. Go fix your mess. What? Go, she said. Tread carefully. Get them in him quickly, before he does something stupid. My breathing was out of control. Should I do it now? I asked, panicked. I would think so. I am bleeding. He won't want to lie with me today. He will not notice or care. Will I conceive? Possibly, said Hildy, handing me something. Eat this. It's a fertility charm. Eat it. I looked at the piece of parchment with a scramble of Latin on it. Zita impatiently shoved it into my mouth. I chewed, tasting the ink. Swallow, she said. I gulped, feeling it get stuck halfway down my throat. How do I do this? I don't know in which inn he abides. Even if I did, he would not let me into his rooms. He thinks I will curse his cock. Zita translated this for Hildy, with a truly obscene final hand gesture. Annie will help her, Hildy said confidently. Who is Annie? They call her the Tawny Moor. Her name is Annie Cobby, and you'll find her at Mrs. Banks's house. My mouth fell open. Isn't that the whorehouse? Annie has been spending some time with your husband. I was shocked. Of course, I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was. How do you know? We see with our witch's eye. Hildy wiggled her eyebrows. I think she was fucking with me. Don't think badly of Annie. She is a good woman. Zita began leading me to the door. Tell her we have sent you, and I would think between the two of you, you could orchestrate something. I don't want to go to the whorehouse. Don't be snooty, Zita snapped. I put the mushrooms in my cloak pocket and let my finger rub over the smooth glass. If things go the way of the dog, Maude, come back to us. Hildy smiled at me warmly. I looked at Zita, but she was staring at the floor.